My name's Shane Abbess, and I'm a man who was abducted by a ginger beard. I did a lot of short films, did a lot of music clips, sort of, you know, the same sort of trial and error that everyone did. But one of the big things that I had identified when I was quite young was that, you know, a lot of Australian films had a lack of style. You know, French cinema, a lot of European cinema, everything coming out of the States. There was a point where I could sort of identify the era or the director or the place it kind of came from, and I think I wasn't as aware of that. Besides like Abbess and Proyas and a couple of the directors from here, I wasn't really as aware of it out of this country. So for me, short films was a way of developing a style, a visual style, to kind of try and figure out where I fit in the scheme of things, and also what was my voice. Because I think that's one of the biggest things, and it's hardest to keep across your whole career, is your voice. What's your perspective on this that you choose to keep, and how does it develop with you as your career sort of progresses, you know? And I think one of the hardest things about LA, you know, is when you get into sort of that stock exchange of creativity, you know, it's so loud, is to how do you keep your voice amongst that, because everyone's trying to scream so loud, and you kind of go, well, my voice is this, but Jesus, this guy next to me is screaming his fucking guts out, like I should be doing that, should I? You know, and then you stop listening and stop thinking about it, just stick with what you do, and, you know, live or die by that sword. Infinity was born out of anarchy. It was born out of, Infinity is a film that kind of has a lot of hate in it, you know, and it's kind of unashamedly has a lot of hate in it. It's the kind of film where it's a very strange experience for all of us that worked on it, because I got to the end of the film, like the cast and the crew, and I just don't care what people think of it, you know what I mean? And I hope people really enjoy it, and I don't mind if they don't. It took over itself, and it's such a bizarre thing to say, but I feel like it got such a life of its own, and there was so much intensity to the film and so much intensity to the process that it sort of just dictated its own path, and we let it go where it wanted to go. So it feels, Infinity as a film, it feels like its own entity. It feels like a beast that kind of came in and tore us apart and left us on the floor, and when we kind of put the pieces back together, that was the film. A little bit dangerous, stay away. It was a really interesting process for me. After Gabrielle, which is so, you know, controlled, and we knew what we wanted to do. We knew what we wanted to do with Infinity, but anarchy and hate and chaos and exploring a lot of these feelings was a huge part of the process. But when you say to somebody, oh, we're going to go there and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, to actually do it, to actually go where you're saying you're going to go, to live that authenticity, it's a very dangerous place to be. And I think for a lot of the cast and myself and a couple of the other key creatives, it was a very hard film to come back from. So we had a lot of troubles after the film was over reconnecting. So it was a very traumatic, in a good way, experience, because we went for it. We really did. I think Sam Mendes said in an interview, you know, there's no right or wrong films. It's more or less interesting. You know, some films are more interesting than others. And for me, I think in this genre space, because of the declining budgets, because the middle class has gone from the world cinema, there's the tent poles and there's the indies. I think the audience is now, like my kids will grow up on this kind of sense of you know, what a horror film is found footage, or it's a very low budget experience, or it's a massive $100 million sort of thing. And we wanted to do something that was very different. And after spending many years of development in Los Angeles on some really big films, I wanted to make the anti-version of that. I wanted to do a film that had, like, literally, you know, the typical 3-act structure, and every time, you know, this character, you had to introduce them because they had to do this by page 30, and all that. I just threw all that out the window. Brian Caccia, the other writer as well, we just went with a very organic feel, and we actually put ourselves in the space and lived it. We knew where we began and where we ended, and we just lived it for a few weeks to kind of map out the story until we felt we'd actually physically lived the journey, and that was the script. It wasn't a conscious thought of, I'll make sure the person's done this by this point, and again, it was anarchy. It was rebelling against all the years of sort of structure and form and things that we've been doing. So it's really interesting. It was an interesting process. I mean, writing is such a personal experience for everybody. I write with a lot of music, you know, and for me, it's something that the only way I got a lot better at writing was to be surrounded by much better writers. You know, did a lot of reading, work with, in Hollywood, some of the top writers there, and I sort of identified the scripts that they wrote. The script was like a novel. It was like a journey. Like, I could read the script. I mean, Shane Black, I think, was the first one to really, that I'm aware of. Robert Town was good at it too. Like, these guys kind of really took you, when you read the script, it was this journey that you kind of, oh, holy shit, I've got to go watch this, you know. And they were aware that they had to entertain the reader, as opposed to just write a script that was functional, that had to get you from this to A to Z and show you how the film goes. That was really exciting. And I think for me, I kind of adapted a lot of that style to kind of over the years, because being a writer-director, you often go, oh, don't worry, when I shoot that, it'll be much more engaging or much more enticing, interesting. But then I sort of learned you have to put that on the page, because that's the financiers, it's the agents, it's the actors, it's everyone who's got to invest in the film before you get to that point that you need to really get them on the hook. So I changed my style a lot over time, and you know, it was, like I said, I was really honoured to work with some of the best writers in Hollywood, to learn from them to what I wanted to do. And then for Infinity, you know, once we had the story, there was about a 3 or 4 month period where we just kept at it, we just kept at it, you know. And I think that's one of the things with development is there's always a point where a film reaches a window where it's ready to be made, and then if you miss that window, you've got to start again, you know. And I think that's the thing that I saw many times on films happen, where you'd write, you get the great draft, it was ready, but this piece of casting didn't fall in, that money quite didn't appear, and now that idea's already out in that film, and now we're a bit dated, and now that type of film a year later doesn't work, and now we're 2 years on, and holy shit, we've got to start again. And I think for Infinity, we kind of knew we had a start date, we had a story, and a first draft that people really liked. So we kind of wrote with incredible passion, because we knew we had to go make it. You know, I think that was a very liberating experience for the script. Yeah, never really looking at what's popular, because what's popular was made 2 years ago. So, you know, and you think about like Mad Max or Pulp Fiction or these films, any film that kind of really redefines or changes the way things are done, even Birdman. At the time of doing them, these are massively risky endeavours that could fail. And there's a lot of other films we never heard of that did fail or failed to reach an audience in the way they wanted to. So I think anytime you do something completely different, you know, that's the fun of the risk, and that's my favourite thing moving forward, is taking those massive risks to say, okay, if you're getting to expect what cinema is, and everyone's really in on the game now, DVDs, behind the scenes, it all changed. You kind of knew, you know, like kids know how green screens work and effects, and we're all very savvy to what film is. The mystery's gone, you know, and I think that's kind of, it's to bring that back now, is to take any conventional what they expect and just turn it on its head. But it's really hard in a marketplace that is risk aversive, because it's very fearful, because the revenue streams are getting smaller and smaller, so they need to make sure this has got to hit, man. Like, you just got to satisfy this market, just make it for that. And I sort of like the fact that I feel like I've always thought of us as like cockroaches, you know, like on the edge of the nuclear. And when it all burns down, when it's all gone, you know, we'll still be there with our little flags trying to make a movie. For me, it's like one thing I learnt in my time in LA was that sort of, you know, people need to be, no one does anything just for the hell of doing anything. So if you're on a film set, everyone wants to get somewhere, everyone has a goal, it's life, you know what I mean? You always have to be evolving or moving somewhere. So with any artist, I don't like to sort of just be like, here, just do this, and like, they're not technicians. I mean, that's the thing I think a lot of people make a mistake on a film. Like, everybody on that set is an artist. You know, if you allow them the space to live and breathe and do it, they can bring a lot of things to the film. And I think the same with Carl. So Carl, I said, this is the style of film I want to do. I'm very specific about shots and the way I want to do it. So it's more about like here's exactly the way I want to do it. Come on in and help enhance, change, you know. But within that, Carl and I were able to get a style that was uniquely his and mine together. It's very symbiotic, you know, and we were able to figure out together the style of film. We wanted to do a film from the era of 79 to 82, because that was like Apocalypse Now, The Thing, Alien, Wrath of Khan was 82. It was like, this was an amazing era for cinema, my favourite era. And I think we wanted to go back there like a love letter, and a very sick and twisted love letter, and be a part of that, because we can't be, but we wanted to do a film that gave great honour to that period. So Carl was fantastic. We used the same lenses that they used back on those films, and we tried to use as many principles as we could to keep it practical and keep it like it feels like an old school film. And any tricks that they couldn't do in that era of 79 to 82, we didn't do on our film. So there's a lot of camera moves and tricks and flashy things that people do now that was not allowed. And you'd see people going, we got a crane here, we should do this. And it's like that shot, that type of shot wasn't used in that era. So we need to exist back when that would happen. So it was great. It was really fun. It gave me a lot more time with the actors, and you know, then the lens choices, the shot selection. There had to be a lot of purpose and a lot of thought put into that, as opposed to just, you know, bullshit baffles. So, you know, we'll just whiz bang this whole thing, and we'll just technically and stylistically baffle you through the bits that don't quite work. We were very raw and we had to make it work with the performances, you know, which was a great challenge. It was all sets, so we had 21 sets that we had to build. But the very first thing that happened was our production designer, George Little, he actually said, you know, the only way we're going to make this work is if we use pre-existing locations, a very tight budget, and we build on top of them. So we found an old Bayer factory out at Kernell, which is amazing. I mean, a very disturbing place. They had I'm sure they did animal testing and stuff out. It just felt like that kind of a place. Maybe they didn't, so I'm not hammering Bayer here. But the place was very creepy. But what we had to do is we had to monitor it because of the age of it for asbestos. And we had moved all our construction teams in, we moved everything into this, and we had like about 15 sets and locations we were building upon. And then a couple of the air monitors picked up very trace asbestos on the perimeter of the area, nowhere near us, but it was coming in. So if we had another few storms like we'd had, we would probably get this towards our sets, and we just couldn't risk that. So 6 weeks from the start of the film, we had to pack everyone up, we had to pack all our sets up. I lost 9 locations that were pre-existing, and now we've got trucks full of, you know, like flats and sets and pieces of this and that. And then we had 3 or 4 days where we had to find a new place to shoot. So we found somewhere out in Sydney, like an old abandoned, not abandoned, but an old factory. And we literally hired 2 massive spaces, blacked it out, and went for it. So it was a big challenge. We lost a week and a half in pre on a very tight schedule, and I lost about 6 or 7 locations. And then the art department had to make up for that, and we had to redesign and rebuild them, which was the thing we were going into it saying we don't want to do. We had to end up doing it 2 weeks out from the start of the shoot. So it's a huge testament to the art department working round the clock. There wasn't a minute that place wasn't humming. And a lot of our art department actually also stayed, like, we had Unbroken and a whole bunch of films turn up while we were there. And they were offering some of our people 3-4 times their weekly wage to come across to them. And we had a lot of people stay with us, and that was a huge honour, and it put a really healthy pressure on the film because people believed in it so much. We had to deliver something special because these people have put so much time and energy into it. Directing actors is such a personal sort of thing. It's something that has evolved for me over the whole course of my career, which is, you know, I started out, I always loved actors, but obviously I think all the short film era, I was really concerned about the technical aspects of filmmaking. How do you develop a visual style, and how do you execute this in the edit, and how do you make action scenes work, and how do you get atmosphere, and how do you get all these things to work in a film. But then when we came close to doing Gabrielle, I was really starting to change my focus because that was now inbuilt in my DNA. But what wasn't built is how do you get those level of performances that you really want. And I think you learn a lot as you go. But I developed quite an intense, truthful style. So for me, if you live it and it's very truthful and it's very honest, we kind of can't go wrong because I'm not shooting a bunch of people acting. You know, it sounds like a wanky thing, but I'm shooting behaviour, I'm shooting truth, I'm shooting a real moment. And to stay true to that and actually commit to that, I think on Infinity for the first few weeks, it took a lot of people, like, again, you say it, sounds like fucking great, I get it, a lot of people have said that, we should do that, all right, well then do it. Like if you have to confront death, fuck you can't do it. You can't do it right now. So you have to actually spend a long time to find a way to get to that space where death is a reality for you, and to really face death. It changes people. So if you're about to do a film where you have to confront death in a real way, you have to be ready for the consequences of that as an actor, you know, and as a filmmaker as well. And I think that's the thing on Infinity, and that's the thing with any performance. It kind of really starts to change. I mean, going back to Gabrielle, I remember at the end of the film, Andy, because Andy was very raw on that film, and I had him and Dwayne, and Dwayne's a very intensely immersive actor, and Andy ended up becoming that way too. You know, and I remember he and I sat together on the rooftop in the very last scene of the film, and it's North Sydney. You know, it's an ABC tower, and it's North Sydney, and we sat there and looked out over it, and he said, "I don't know how to finish this. I don't know how to." As Gabrielle, you know, we weren't talking as people anymore. It was the angel Gabrielle, and he said, "I don't know how to finish. I don't know how to finish the film, like the story. I don't know how to do this." And I said, "Listen," and I believed it in the moment. I said, "I think we're done. Like, I don't think you can overcome your brother. I don't think you can overcome what this is. So let's call it. Let's wrap. Like, let's just wrap it. Like, we're done. I backed you Gabe every step of this way, and now we're in the final moments. And I get that it's too much for you. I get that you can't do it. So let's just call it. And let's wrap the set. Let's finish it. We can't finish this, you know. And it was interesting that then the Angel Gabriel, you know, through Andy, you know, he then kind of he was the one who stopped it and went no, because that's what we were trying to get to, you know, was that he had to find it in himself. But life and art at that point were very blurred, you know, as a thing. And then come forward to Infinity. And Infinity was like that times 10. You know, we had Daniel McPherson, who obviously had a lot on the line with this. You know, Dan really had spent a couple of years in LA not doing the type of acting, TV acting, all those things he was sort of known for, and he was developing into a really intense artist. And I didn't believe that until I saw it. You know, I talked to him about it, and until I saw what he was capable of, it was amazing. You know, and then we got Luke Ford on the film, and Luke is probably one of the most, you know, he's so unbelievably talented, but he's also a very intensely immersive actor as well. But to the point where when he turned up, everyone on the film was like, oh, that's interesting. I thought he'd be more in the zone with the character. And it's like, he is playing the character. You actually have never met this guy. Like, the real Luke that I know is not this guy who's ever been in one makeup test. He's never been on the film. And then I think the three of them, and then Dwayne Stevenson, and it was 24/7 living this thing, and you know, we patrol the perimeters at night, and there's a lot of things I think I'd let him talk about it. He probably wouldn't want me to expose, but that, and then Hemsworth and everyone, slowly but surely in the first few weeks, it just got to a point where this bar was set, and I kind of let the actors get to a point where if you're in a moment of truth with one another and you actually can't. You know, I can watch it as the director, and you know, I have my opinions, and we have that bit. If a character asks another character for something and they can't deliver that, that's a pressure unlike anything a director or a film or a script can put on you. Because if we're in a moment together and we're actually in the moment together, and the camera's here watching it, but I'm here and I'm thinking I'm supposed to be in love with you, but I can tell that you're fucking acting. I can tell that this is not. We're not here together. I made sure that those guys could call each other out. I made sure they could walk out of a scene and fucking shut the whole thing down because I wanted that level of commitment every day on that set. And it was guys like Luke and Dwayne and Dan that were pushing that. And then you had every other character in that film, then they rose up and then they rose up. And it was amazing the pressure characters can put on each other. So I feel like I built the playground for the film and then sat back and I directed. I just steered it as it needed to go. But one of the great evolutions, I think, between Gabriel and this one was the fact that you don't have to do as much. Like when you're younger, you want to justify your job as a director. Like, oh, I said this thing to him or her, and I made the difference to that scene, or I had this grand vision. And you know, it's all good when you're coming through, but I think there's a maturity when you're just a filmmaker, or you've got it to a point where you're very comfortable in that skin. You don't have to justify why or the how. You know, and a lot of my directing with the actors on Infinity was done behind closed doors. So I was like a ghost, or wanted to whisper on set to them. But the most work I did was the morning when they were getting ready, talking to one person this way, talking to another person this way, setting up the reality that I thought the film should exist in, and then watching them interact, and then just quietly manipulating the film as it went. And I wanted them, and they did at the end of the film. They owned their characters. You know, I don't want to watch Dan's performance and go, you know, Shane, great job crafting him to do that. And it's like, no, that has to be Dan's character. You know what I mean? Dan McPherson has to be Wick Carmichael. He has to walk away and go, that was my guy. I handed him over, and he did that, and I directed the movie. But I don't own the characters. The actors own the characters, and that was a big thing on this one that I was very passionate about. And they did a fantastic job, so I'm very grateful.